Hamid Hakimi. I am the coordinator of Opportunity and Crisis Project at Chatham House, which is aimed at bringing policymakers and experts together on some of the key issues and challenges facing Afghanistan in the current year and beyond. Today we are with Dr. Soraya Sobhrang. You are also a commissioner at the Afghanistan Independent Human Rights Commission. You're also a member of the Women's Charter, which is demanding that presidential candidates address some of the key issues in relation to women's rights. Welcome.
Thank you.
Do you believe that women's rights groups and organizations in Afghanistan are too dependent on Western governments, particularly on Western donors?
Unfortunately, women's rights groups and civil society organisations did not receive support from other sources, including the Afghan government, in order to undertake their missions. This has meant that the groups needed to approach donors for funding, which naturally means depending on the governments and non-governmental organisations in the donor countries.
What is your advice to Western donor governments in relation to supporting women's rights in Afghanistan?
We feel that the funding and support which the international community provides for empowering women in Afghanistan must take place in the context of a national gender strategy. In addition, the scope and expectations from the funded activities must be specified and explained so that the achievements and shortcomings are clear. The international community can also support women in a number of immediate and long-term ways. For instance, by playing a mediator's role in the election period to ensure that women's vote is protected, by holding the Afghan government accountable in its responsibility to uphold the international treaties on rights of citizens and women. Afghanistan's constitution provides many opportunities for women's social and legal empowerment. The international community must engage the next Afghan government to protect women's constitutional rights.
How significant is the role of men in Afghanistan in ensuring that the women's rights movement is supported?
Fortunately, one of the achievements of the last decade has been the increasing level of awareness among people of rights and responsibilities towards women. There is a large number of successful women activists and public figures who are successful because the men around them are supportive of them. This support network usually involves men in the families of women who are seeking opportunities and trying to make their mark in our country's social, political and economic arenas. We cannot ignore the overwhelming change that has taken place for women in the last decade, particularly in their presence in public spheres such as the parliament, education sector, health sector and civil society movements. If you go around and ask many of the female government employees, for instance, you will find out that in most cases there are supportive men who have been a source of encouragement and empowerment for these women. I interviewed a number of candidates for the provincial council elections and was delighted to know that mostly the men in their families were campaigning for them. In several cases, I witnessed that the men around these female candidates were in fact sacrificing a lot in facing the daily threats on behalf of the women candidates. This must be acknowledged as a major achievement for women that a growing number of men in their families and in society are increasingly supportive of women's equality. Indeed, a positive social transformation has taken place with regard to women's empowerment in the last decade, both as women and men have had better access to education, and media has also played an important role in raising the level of awareness among Afghans.
How optimistic are you about Afghanistan's elections?
It is encouraging to see Afghans all over the country have reached the conclusion that there is only one way forward for Afghanistan to get out of the current crises, and that is through the political process, which is non-violent and centred around elections. We can compare Afghanistan to a vehicle that is stuck on a muddy path, and the only way for its passengers to safety is through non-violence and political consensus. We are very optimistic about the election process and hope that it will deliver the much-needed stability for Afghans everywhere in their country. We have conducted interviews and held conversations across Afghanistan, and I can assure you that people are supportive of the election process. Despite the challenges and threats, including from those who target and murder innocent civilians. Afghans are keen to be part of a political process that delivers transfer of political power through non-violent means. Overall, I am very optimistic about the election process and have hopes for the future, especially as I believe the Afghan people have overcome challenges throughout their history. Our local media in Afghanistan has played an incredibly important role and will be significantly important in Afghanistan's continued journey towards democratisation. I must emphasise that Afghanistan needs the support of the international community for its political and economic stability and for legitimacy of the election process. The international community must play its role as a mediator and a monitoring mechanism within the elections process.
Thank you very much.